fan of Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared knows that each of the episodes takes place on June 19th in 1955.
Let me stop you right there, MatPat. 1955? What's with the computer and cell phone in the second one? And what about the fact that Red Guy's origin story is completely in plain sight for all to see? Are you just gonna overlook that? Film theory, I think I'm gonna pull United Airlines and kick you off this Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared plane. After today, you and many others will be rethinking all of the prior conclusions about this series. What is up, guys? It is Jack and welcome to a new video. Now, I know I don't do this kind of stuff often. Theories seem out of my league. I'm just a puny vlogger, dare I say a member of the low gang. But today, I want to revisit something that's completely irrelevant and been on nobody's minds lately. Don't hug me, I'm scared. And to help me take on the challenge, I have the one, the only, BLK the Brilliant here to help. So, just a few weeks ago, I was rewatching some of the episodes. I remembered how MatPat and multiple other theorists had speculated that the series takes place in 1955. But as I got to the sixth one, I realized something. That office Red Guy is in is clearly not from 1955.
I mean, look at the computer. That looks like a vintage Mac. But that's impossible. Steve Jobs wasn't even born until early 1955. Baby Steve hadn't created computers that looked like that, and neither had Microsoft. Computers took up entire rooms and weren't marketed and sold to the public in small form factors like that until 1977.
In fact, let's take a look at the fourth episode. The computer that's singing to the puppets looks a lot like this vintage computer that wasn't around until 1982. In fact, we can even find more evidence in the second episode about time, where the clock sings about how we've evolved as a society. In this scene, he blatantly shows a video game controller as well as an iPhone. How could this possibly take place in 1955 like everyone thought? The clock specifically states the future doesn't exist. So how could he show the future when there is none? After realizing this, I decided to go back and rethink some of the popular DHMIS theories. Most of them revolve around it being 1955 and the rise of independent TV in England, as well as ads and corporate influence, Roy representing the media trying to take over. Now knowing that this isn't really when the series takes place, I decided that rather than try and change or tweak that theory, I would just look at the series in a whole new way, something that no one's done in a very long time, as it seems it's been settled that that is the official theory, which solves the series. But boy, get ready to be amazed and kinda pissed when I tell you that in the end, the whole thing is just Red Guy's imagination.
And there's actually a lot of evidence to support this. For starters, it is clearly shown throughout the series that Red Guy clearly knows what is going on. He's the only one to ever break the fourth wall, and it seems as if he is asking someone off camera these questions. But it would make a lot more sense if he is really just talking to himself.
Also, this would explain all the missing signs on the milk can, the trees, and the wanted poster. Red knows that people are looking for him in the outside world.
He knows that outside of his cave, people wonder where he is. Actually, he's just hiding underground from his fears, imagining a better life for himself, imagining what he wishes his life was like.
Sound familiar? Well, that's because it is. He literally tells us. And this is where we get to the most important part of the whole theory, the most overlooked part of this entire series. It's literally something that no one has ever mentioned in a theory, and it's not to be just random for the sake of being random. But for those loyal followers of this series, we know that there is so much more hidden behind the randomness that goes on in these episodes. But enough beating around the bush. I'm talking about the story of Michael.
This is the story of Michael, the ugliest boy in town. Ugly and weak, they called him a freak, so he lived on his own underground. He lived on his own underground. He lived on his own underground.
Now, am I saying that this 15-second clip explains every mystery of the entire series? No, not at all. But what it does is it reveals Red's backstory. That's right, I'm saying that Red Guy is Michael.
Woo! For starters, we know Red Guy is actually a human in a costume, since in the Kickstarter video, we clearly see his costume on the floor, as if he's taking it off. But if Red Guy really is Michael, how does this explain that this all takes place in his head? Well, for starters, it explains to us how and why Red Guy went into the real world. He's finally exiting his cave into the real world, outside his imagination, where everything is much more, well, sad.
It's a giant metaphor for what life is really like outside of his imagination. Bar, the office, and the fact that everyone looks just like him, it's all boring for the sake of being boring. Well, that's not really what everyone might look like, that's how it feels to Red Guy. When Red pitches the idea of the file in the office after literally waking up as if he was imagining again just now in the real world, as well as when he sings the creativity song in the bar, that's Red Guy's way of seeing if he can get the real world to be as creative as him, to join him in making life more fun.
But let's take a couple of steps back. Being in the cave for all those years explains why there are computers and phones, and why Red Guy is imagining those things. Time is progressing in the real world, but like Peter Pan, Red never wants to grow up, so he imagines every day to be June 19, 1955, the day he got there. And if you still aren't convinced, how about the fact that when all other things Red Guy has imagined appear at the end, including the file, which he thought of just hours before at the office, the duck appears. The duck appears. The freaking duck appears! Along with the singing file, something we've already established Red Guy had created in his mind.
Red Guy, or should I say Michael, wants to live in his cave, alone, as a fully grown adult, wearing a costume he probably made out of yarn, in an effort to make himself less of a freak, if you know what I mean. He is called the ugliest boy in town. Sounds kind of unhealthy, if you ask me. But what about the fact that at the end of every episode, things turn weird and scary? And what about Roy? I've convinced you this is Red Guy's dream life, but all this stuff in his imagination seems a lot more like a nightmare than a fantasy in paradise. Well, the truth is, Red Guy is probably mentally ill. He hasn't had any real human contact in over 50 years, as shown by the time span of 1955 to at least 2007, the release of the original iPhone, something shown in Red Guy's brain. Roy is part of his subconscious, someone that Red Guy has created in his mind that he uses to blame for all his misery. As many of you can agree, it's always easier to decide on someone to blame for something than leave it an open case. So Red created Roy in his mind as sort of the bad guy, someone Red can blame for his sorrow.
And there's actually a lot of evidence to support this. For starters, Red Guy never agrees with the teachers, who are presumably controlled by Roy. In the first episode, he states his signature line.
That sounds pretty boring.
In the second episode, he just wants to go back and watch his TV show. In the third, he doesn't want to save his friend. And in the fourth, he doesn't get sucked into the computer like everyone else does. By the fifth episode, he's gone. He's calling his friends, which he doesn't understand, are imaginary, as shown by him walking away from the phone booth.
He's telling his imaginary friends to come with him into the real world, hoping they will join him, not understanding that they aren't real. If this sounds kind of odd to you, by the way, remember that this dude has some stuff seriously wrong with him. I mean, he seems like the one and only Jake Paul that are hidden in a cave, am I right? Oh! Shots fired! JK, Jake, you have more subs than me, please shout me out, I'll take everything I can get. Anyways, it seems as if Roy is hidden everywhere. From the corner to the ceiling to the window, you can find Roy hidden everywhere in almost every scene. And it seems that Roy is clearly evil. As if there's not already more than enough evidence to support this, here's some more. Not only does Roy look pretty evil, but he also prevents any actual teaching to be done. Now, while this would make sense since teaching isn't even possible, it's all going on inside Red's head. When one of the puppets actually tries to explain things using science, as shown in the second episode, Roy controls the clock literally makes Yellow Guy's ears bleed. And not only does Roy try to completely eliminate any sense into Red's mind, but it seems like he's trying to brainwash him and his imaginary friends. In the third episode, one of the teachers literally states, after trying to seduce Yellow into joining a cult,
"This is your chance to start anew, and all we're asking you to do
is change your name.
clean your brain, forget about anything you ever knew."
And you might think that Roy has no influence in this, but it seems as if he's a member of this cult too, sitting right there along with the other teachers. Also, in the fourth episode, every time Red Guy tries to talk, the computer cuts him off, not giving him an opinion.
Wait a second.
What's your favourite colour?
Stop
Do you
talking.
like cows or goat's milk?
Be
Do you
quiet.
have brown hair? What is your blood type? Are you allergic
Shut
to
up.
Don't touch me!
As shown by the only time the word opinion is ever said or shown in the entire series, spelled wrong. Other times words are spelled wrong include the word harmony, spelled harmony. Again, showing that Roy doesn't want to live in harmony with Red inside his mind, and does not want to give him an actual opinion. Or should I say, opinoin. Let me say though, this dude is weird and has a wild imagination. It's almost too wild. It just shows that Red clearly has something wrong with him. And going off of this theory, it actually explains the ending really well. Red's mind blow in the fourth is him coming out of his imagination, as shown by it literally popping. Sure, he can still imagine, but he isn't gonna spend his whole life doing it. He's in the real world now. And as I stated, everything is now a metaphor for how much fun things can be in one's imagination.
Red is bored out of his mind in this new world. No pun intended. And And he wants to be creative and imagine his imaginary friends in the real world. He's hoping people will agree with him, but everyone hates it. And Roy being in the bar is again completely a metaphor. It's like the devil on his shoulder saying, stop, give up, go back in your cave. And Red almost listens. He probably runs off stage and jumps right back into his imagination.
Except this time with a goal. He wants to set his imaginary world to how it should be and destroy Roy, his horrible creature he's created in his mind, the devil on his right shoulder. Sure, he could just stop imagining it, but think about it. Roy isn't just a song he can't get out of his head. It's like he's depressed, not for a specific reason, but just like with Roy, he can't not think about it and feel bad for himself. So he wants to end the entire situation for himself, because after trying to end it by leaving his cave, it was unsuccessful because he kept imagining things, only this time in the real world. It's almost like his addiction. So what Red Guy imagines is Roy's headquarters, where Roy controls all the evil in his brain. As if finally coming to terms with himself that Roy isn't real and he can't control his own mind, he pulls the plug and creates a new, healthier imagination. It doesn't always have to be June 19th, and while he's only moved a day, he's taking it one step at a time. Everyone is now their favorite colors, and finally he can decide for himself what he wants to imagine. Red Guy can be his own person without the influence of his terrible, horrible, no good, very bad monster he has created in his mind, Roy. And that, my friends, is where we wrap up. And in conclusion, Red Guy's got a pretty messed up mind. But basically, the whole series is a metaphor for Red getting over, or at least controlling, his 50-year mental illness. He will finally learn to communicate with the real world, making friends and becoming a much happier human being.
I'm almost interested to see an epilogue to see where Michael is now. He could be reuniting with his family, building real-life puppets, and living an amazing life.
Or maybe this whole thing's just a TV show, I don't even know.